Thanks for the reminder. We are recording now. And again, I'll just do that quick intro again. We've got Adam Eggleton here, Senior Policy Analyst, about to talk to us of the review of the Parks and Reserves bylaw. So I'll hand over to Adam.
Awesome, thank you for that. Like I said, I'm Adam Eggleton, a Senior Policy Analyst in the Strategic Policy team. And with me on the call, I have Tina Crocker, who's a bylaws expert in our team, and Derek Rosen, a Senior Parks and Policy Planner. So the purpose of this presentation is just to introduce the work that has started to get underway for the review of the Parks and Reserves bylaw. So what's the purpose of the bylaw? Simply put, the bylaw seeks to provide for the orderly management and control of parks and reserves under the control of council for the benefit and enjoyment of all users. The bylaw is made under two pieces of legislation. Each clause in the bylaw must meet the requirements of either the Local Government Act or the Reserves Act. These two acts give the council the power to make bylaws, but also puts limitations on the bylaws and their powers. This includes the enforcement tools we have available, and this bylaw needs to be reviewed within 10 years of the last time. So what do we mean when we talk about parks and reserves? There's a lot of green space in the district and other land managers such as the Department of Conservation and Environment Canterbury. What this bylaw is concerned with is the parks and reserves managed by council. It includes land that has been legally declared as a reserve, council parks and other green space areas, but it does not include land that has been leased. So what does this look like? Here we have a snapshot of the scale of some of these assets we're talking about. These numbers are taken from the 2024 Parks and Foreshore Asset Management Plan and give an idea of the scale of some of the things the bylaw touches. We can see here that we have over 10,000 hectares of parkland, just over 100 regional parks, over 1,500 kilometres of walking tracks and paths, 400 playgrounds, just to name a few of the assets we have in this space. So some things that the bylaw covers. It has three main parts. Part one is access to reserves. Part two is prohibited and restricted activities in reserves. And part three touches special areas. So some examples of what this covers are when parks and reserves are open to the public and when they may be closed. Various restrictions on behaviours in parks and reserves. The rules relating to animals in reserves. The rules relating to vehicles, other mechanical devices and vessels in parks and reserves, restrictions on lighting fires, restrictions on camping, restrictions on the use of aircraft and drones in parks and reserves, and provisions relating to the playing of sports and games in parks and reserves, with some special mentions of specific areas such as Hagley Park, the Botanic Gardens, and Ralphity Golf Course. So I've included this slide for a bit of context to set out how the bylaw can be used by staff as a useful tool, and I've set out some behaviours and the relevant bylaw provisions that relate to them. With these, enforcement is usually by pointing out that activity is against the rules and then having the public to comply voluntarily. There's no power to issue an infringement fine with this bylaw. Prosecution and a fine of up to $20,000 is an option, although this is something that has really been needed to be undertaken. So the first example I've got is visitors removing plants or flowers from Hagley Park. This is against clause 6.1a. No person may remove a tree, shrub or plant. Another example would be a helicopter taking off or landing in a park or reserve without permission. And this would be against clause 13.1 of the bylaw, where no person may land or take off in an aircraft or park or reserve without permission. Another example would be a member of the public entering a park that is closed for repairs. And this would be against clause 5.3, which sets out that no person may enter a reserve that is closed to the public. And the final example would be, for example, a member of the public lighting a fire in a reserve without permission, which is against clause 10.1, setting out that no person may light a fire in a park or reserve without permission. So what are the areas of interest that we've started to look at already? We've been casting a very wide net and looking at all relevant issues that could be considered in this bylaw review. Some ones that have come to mind are updating it with who makes sure that it's compliant with current legislation and practices. What this means is that we're reviewing the bylaw for any references or clauses that are now out of date. An example of this is clause 10 of the bylaw, which refers to the Christchurch City Council Urban Fire Safety Bylaw. This is a bylaw that was revoked in December 2017 when the Fire and Emergency New Zealand FENZ was formed, and the regulatory responsibilities the council had in relation to fire management were transferred to FENZ. They're now the primary organisation for addressing fire risk. Another issue is the impact of e-scooters and new forms of land transport. This is an issue as when the review of this bylaw was last undertaken between 2014 and 2016, e-scooters, e-bikes, and other micro-mobility devices were not widespread in the community. As such, consideration will be given to the impacts this development has had on our parks and reserves, and if there are any changes we need to make. Another one is the role of our bylaw in occupation-style protests. Following a number of occupation-style protests between late 2021 and early 2022, the Council commissioned an independent review of the Council's response to these occupations. One of the things the report recommended that when relevant bylaws are reviewed, the Council should look to see if any improvements can be identified. We are looking into occupation-style protests as part of this review of the bylaw, but currently do not have any suggested changes or amendments in response. There are already some protections in the bylaw to limit certain activities, including interference with reserves, no camping, and not building or constructing things in parks or reserves. Another key reason is that the legislation that this bylaw is made under provides limited enforcement tools. For example, it does not allow for the issuing of infringement fines like some of our other bylaws do. This is because some of those other bylaws are made under different legislation. And the final issue is permissions under this bylaw. In some circumstances, Council may give out permissions for access to certain areas and then have situations where the terms and conditions of those permissions are breached. Currently, the process to revoke that permission is difficult and time-consuming, so options are being explored to see if there are better methods to manage this. And we also have one on camping clarity. We receive a number of inquiries around how the rules around camping in the bylaw operate and how they work in conjunction with the Freedom Camping bylaw. We are looking at how we can provide better clarity, possibly through an explanatory note to set this out. So that's just a snapshot of just some of the issues that have been identified at this early stage. So what's next? We're in the very early stages of exploring any potential issues and changes. Once a draft bylaw and accompanying report is ready, Council will consider it prior to going to the public to consult on. We welcome any thoughts you may have now, any thoughts you may have when submissions open and there is additional detail, and very keen for any questions, comments, or issues you might want to raise now.
If anyone wants to put their hand up or fire away to Adam. Okay.
I'll ask him a question.
Yeah, fire away, Jo.
Yeah, okay. When it comes to actually picking flowers or fruit and everything, is there any bylaw against doing it in the red zones for food foraging?
The bylaw sets out that it's against the rules in any park or reserve. So it depends on the status of the land. I understand that would be against the rules in the red zone.
Okay, because the red zone has changed from ownership from LINZ over to the council, and it's classed as a reserve or a park now, isn't it?
If it's classed as a park or reserve, then the ban would be in place for taking under 6.1, yes.
Okay, thank you.
If there are no further questions, we will be providing additional chances for any comments when we send it out to consultation and submissions.
Great. Well, I don't see any hands up. Going once, going twice. Any questions for Adam and his team? Okay. Well, thank you, Adam, for joining, and we'll shift on to the next item.
Thank you.
Cheers. Okay, next up we have Matt Pratt giving us an update on community board engagement with LGNZ. Hello,
Kia ora,
Matt.
team. Thanks for having me. This is a quick update around the process and the findings of the surveys that we've done recently around community board members' interaction with LGNZ, an overview of the process. Some of you will know that Council's considering whether to renew the annual subscription of Council's membership of Local Government New Zealand, LGNZ. There was a report that went to Council a few weeks ago, and the report was stopped. It was taken off pursuant to standing orders, basically with a question of could we get some feedback from community board members. The report goes back to Council tomorrow for a decision. In the meantime, we've run 2 surveys. We did a survey which took place prior to the 11th of June, and we asked some questions around local board members' engagement with LGNZ. We sent the survey to all of the community board members. We didn't send it to councillors. We discussed the findings of that survey, high-level summary, with community board chairs on, I think, the 13th of June. And subsequently, we've sent out another survey to all of the board members to ask some more questions. And there's a report which goes to Council tomorrow. The report that goes to Council tomorrow includes a memo. It's a memo with a memo attached to it. And I'll just run you through what the 2 memos say and what the findings were. So the first survey was really asking how community board members interact with LGNZ, how they use the website, whether they found that useful. We had nearly a quarter of elected members came back to us. I think we had nearly 30%. I think it was 30%. Just checking now as I speak to you. It was 11 responses, which is of 37 elected community members, 11 responses. So that's 30% of all community board members responded to that memo. And nearly a quarter of all of those respondents said that they had engaged with LGNZ in the year since they've been elected, so from October 22. The other kind of key summary parts of it were that the most valuable engagement that people have, so 16% of community board members said that actually it's the online resources, specifically the e-modules that are provided through the Akona online learning platform, which have been of most benefit. Networking and conferences weren't universally valued. We had some comments that people said they were really helpful, others said not so much, and no responders to that survey reported receiving individual support or services from LGNZ in this term. Other people had received support from LGNZ prior to that in previous terms. We took those comments, we took that survey, that initial memo to community board chairs meeting on the 13th of June, and board chairs agreed that the summary was a good reflection. We had a brief conversation with the board chairs, and board chairs really reiterated the point that access to the Akona resources could be really useful, particularly to onboard or to induct new community board members. And they made the point that the Akona resources and access to them has been very limited to date, but that the online learning tool could be really useful in the future. Board chairs also reflected that LGNZ membership is made up of a number of smaller councils and more provincial councils, and so often, in their view, LGNZ has had more of a rural focus rather than a metropolitan focus. And metropolitan councils such as Christchurch have a very different focus and consider different issues, and they've not always seen that reflected from LGNZ. Following that discussion with community board chairs, we sent out another survey We sent that out to all 37 elected community board members again. And we asked 3 questions. We asked, is it your preference that council renew its membership with LGNZ? And we also asked, what benefit, if any, do you believe that council receives as a member of LGNZ, and what benefit, if any, do you as an individual community board member receive from council's membership of LGNZ? We had 27% of board members respond, so that's 10 responses. Of those 10 responses, 4 reported it was their preference that council renew its membership with LGNZ. 3 said no, don't renew, and 3 had no preference. In terms of benefits that council receives as a member, responses again reflected the fact that the networking, the advocacy, and the professional development were considered to be among the key benefits. Well, in terms of the responses, it was things like networking, staying connected, the access to the online resources, and that one voice is useful. In terms of what the benefits were as individual members, half of the responders said that they received very little or no benefit as individual community board members, but they were only talking around this term. Other responses indicated again that professional development support and support when required, the ability to be able to go to LGNZ and ask a question, and also attendance at conference was considered to be among the benefits. And that concludes an overview of the 2 surveys.
Are there any questions from that? Questions, comments, concerns? Here we go, Simon.
Good, thank you. Thank you, Matt, for that. And yeah, just acknowledging the work staff have done to gather that feedback and put that summary together. Really just noting for community board members on the call and those who might watch the video later, that should council choose to renew membership tomorrow's meeting, I'll continue to be available as a point of contact for LGNZ support in my role as the regional representative for Community Board's Executive Committee. And those LGNZ resources will continue to be available. And I would just really encourage people, if you haven't already, to access the Arcona learning platform in particular. Check out the modules that are in there. At the very least, I believe there's a 2-month notice period should council vote to resign membership. So get in there and make the most of it. Or if we continue as a member, of course, those resources will still be there. And yeah, for those who've accessed them, I've had good feedback. Kia ora.
Thank you, Simon. Any other questions, comments for Matthew?
Yes, I've got a question. Sarah.
Hi, Sarah.
Hello. I don't have my video on.
That's okay.
I'm just curious. So if it is voted to leave LGNZ, when will access be stopped to the Arcona?
That's a good question. Council, if they do vote that way tomorrow, the constitution of LGNZ says that a month's notice must be given. So staff would, the action would be made, staff would write to LGNZ. I presume that we would inform board members that access would be stopped, and X and Y would be the last day. I presume, and this is an assumption, but I assume that we would give the notice, and so you would have access up until the end of August, but that is to be confirmed.
Okay, cool. And so regarding the that support and wellbeing support and ability to contact like Simon Britton and other LGNZ representatives, what would replace that if it goes?
I don't have an answer for you for that one, Sarah.
Yeah, so I guess that's a concern for me. Is it a staff recommendation to have something that replaces that before, or what? Yeah.
No, the staff, there's no recommendation on the report that's going to council. It's saying, council, would you like to do you wish to renew your membership or not? So that's it. In terms of, it's for the councillors to weigh up the benefits and make that decision.
Okay, so say if we leave, how do we go about getting the support that we need? It's just concerning to me that we don't have anything in place before leaving, if it's voted to leave. And I just want to know how we go about ensuring we can get the support that we need after.
Yeah, I haven't got an answer for that one, I'm afraid, Sarah.
But I mean, my question is, are we to contact staff and
certainly.
or do we contact councillors?
So in terms of governance support, you've got local governance teams who can provide support through process. Christchurch City Council develops its own codes of conduct and its own standing orders, which is something that not all councils do. And so we've got staff that can, if you need support with some of those process type things, we can take you through there. I think LGNZ provides a whole range of modules on their Okona website, which are some of the comments that came back with things like finance support, local government finance support. Was a useful module. Again, it could be something that you could sit down with your governance team and say, we'd like to go through how LTPs work, what the process is for annual plans. And again, that's something that staff can provide. LGNZ obviously provides it to all of the councils up and down the country.
Because as part of our membership, as community board members, we get an allowance for wellbeing support. And I want to ensure that we can still be offered something, but that, from what I'm told, and I still haven't confirmed exactly how much budget we have left for that on our board, the funds are very limited.
We might be talking about different things.
Yeah.
So the LGNZ is an annual membership that council pays to subscribe to Local Government New Zealand Association, and Local Government New Zealand have traditionally advocated and provided one voice for councils into central government, as well as providing some of those kind of structural support things around for that all councils use and advice on the Local Government Act. The budgets, and I know Jess, you're going to jump in a minute, and you can tell me.
We don't specifically have a wellbeing budget. Each community board is given a professional development budget for its community board members.
Yeah, so as a part of the LGNZ membership, elected members get a wellbeing allowance through LGNZ.
I'm not aware of that. Sorry, Matt.
Yeah, I'm not aware of that.
Oh,
Yeah.
I'm just sorry, Sarah, and others to jump across. Yeah, so this information is on the LGNZ website. LGNZ provides free counselling and support for any elected member that needs it, obviously for member councils. So that is a benefit to elected members that will disappear if we resign our membership, and council, I guess, may or may not choose to replace that some other way.
So would that be like EAP support?
Correct.
Yes. Yep, it is. It's effectively the equivalent of an employee assistance program.
Yep. But so I will ask tomorrow to see whether we've got an answer for that. It may come up at the council meeting around EAP and whether that's something that council currently offers to its staff. I don't know whether that extends to elected members through our EAP support. Matt McClintock, I can see you're on the call. You may know the answer to that.
No, I'm in the same position as you guys. But again, as you said, Maddie, we'll get some answers to that tomorrow, and we'll definitely let you guys know.
I think it would also be helpful for councillors to know the amount that's allocated, if it is a dollar value or number of sessions that are allocated to elected members for that support through LGNZ.
Okay. We can note that down as an action, Sarah. Investigate and come back to you.
It's just for tomorrow, so they can make an informed decision, so they know what's available.
Right.
Yep. All very good questions and valuable information that I, as a councillor, and other councillors are going to have to weigh up tomorrow. I'm certainly contemplating the idea of asking a question tomorrow around what's the plan B. So if we do leave LGNZ, where to from here, and what is the support for elected members going forward. And yeah, we need to be as well informed as we can be before making any decisions.
Great. Thank you, Mark. Are there any other questions or comments from attendees?
Oh, yes, I do. Again,
Yep.
Sarah. I haven't read the full the agenda, but do you know the total cost increase for membership? Because the cost has increased, and as far as I'm aware, that's why it's come to council.
I believe, I haven't got the council report in front of me, I believe it's $160,000 a year for membership.
I think it's gone up about 15 or 20% is sort of figure that sticks in my head.
Okay, and so is it correct, and I'm given I'm still very new to understanding all of this, is it correct that if it were to go, there would be the equivalent of 2 full-time employees to replace, employed by the council to replace the work that LGNZ offers, or the membership?
I don't have an answer to that one specifically. I don't know if anybody has provided that. That it would depend on the work that council currently gets LGNZ to do on our behalf.
Okay.
Yeah, Matt McClintock, I certainly haven't heard that one, unless the councillors have been briefed on that. But yeah, certainly I've never heard it reflected in those terms, if you like.
Sure, that's cool. Thank you.
I can see from the report that it went up about $22,000 from the previous year.
And is that the main reason that it's come back to council, or not necessarily?
It's certainly a significant reason.
Thanks, Mark.
I think, to be honest, one of the things that's frustrated me since I've been elected a bit over 4 years ago now is the lack of access to Okona. And I suspect one of the things that's tripped this increase in price is down to the fact that we've now got access to Okona as of right. It's not an option that you have to buy later. So having access to Okona, I think, is quite a good thing for us all.
Great. Thank you, Mark. Okay, any final or any additional questions, comments on this item?
Would now be a good time to speak to the councillors that are here, just to for our personal views, or not necessarily?
Absolutely.
With what I've the research that I've done, I think that it has a value, particularly for us as elected members, in terms of that development through Okona and the wellbeing support. And although there are other reasons why it might be perceived that it is a bit of a waste of money, I think that there is definite value for people like myself, first term elected members.
Great. Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you, Sarah. I certainly hear that.
Cool. Thanks.
Fantastic. Well, if there's no other hands to be raised, I will thank today's speakers for joining us, Adam and Matthew, and thank everyone for dialing on this afternoon.
Thank you, team.
Thank you.
Kia ora. Thanks, Jess.
Thank you. Have a good evening, everyone.
Ka kite. Thanks, Jess. Thanks, Maddie.